let's stop this. Okay. All right. Let's do a little tour. Not of this project. This is the improv project that I've just done. It's super simple. It's just basically a mixer. So each track is an input, and then it has like sidechain, compressor, some EQ, and a filter. Super basic. But this is not what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about my ambient project. So if I open up my ambient project, I also have a special project on the Oxy for my ambient, which you can't see now because the thing's in the way. So whilst that's loading up, I can go through my gear. So yeah, my gear has pretty much always been the same. Not much has changed over the last year, except for the new addition of some pieces of gear. So we still got the Neutron. So the Neutron provides all of like the subs, the lows, and all of that for the ambient project. We got the K2, which gives us some nice swells. I usually have that going, and you can really get some nice squelchy sounds if you boost the external signal processor, loop it back into that, and then just like boost up the volume, get it nice and clipping. Hey, actually, Sparky, how you doing? Welcome in. Just in time for my project run through. Just did a couple of hours of improv. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put this back on the stand so I can hold the mic because it's a bit easier. That's better. And yes, you did miss the cake, unfortunately. You can have some if you want, if you come and get it. Alright. Yes, so the Neutron provides all of the lows of the subs. Really nice. I love the Neutron. And it's a great introductory semi-modular synth because of the patch bay. So the patch bay here, you can break out different things. You can put different things in. And it also works without the patch bay, so you could take all of this out and just use it like a normal synth. So it's super beginner friendly, but also it's a good starting point for doing modular synths because you can just add to it like what I've done here. It's also super cost effective. So if you were to buy all of these modules individually, so like 2 oscillators, a filter, 2 envelopes, an overdrive, a delay, attenuators, you know, you're looking well over 500, maybe even £1,000 for all of those modules individually, and that cost me like 200 quid. So super cost effective. So that provides all my lows. It's really, really nice. I usually have one oscillator on sine wave, and then the second oscillator I have usually like on sawtooth. But what I do is I will automate that, or modulate that, sorry, with either an LFO, or recently I've changed it to using my sample and hold, because on the Neutron, the sample and hold has a glide, which means it will smoothly go between the two values it pulls out. So it's almost like an LFO, but a bit more random, and it's nice. But I have that patched into my attenuator, so I can adjust how much it actually affects the modulation. And then I have got the K2, so the K2 does all the swells. Really, really nice bit of kit. Super simple patch. I just have the audio coming out from the output and then into the external signal processor so I can boost volume. And then I've got an LFO coming out from the Oxy into the low pass cutoff so I can modulate that as well. Then we've got this little thing here that I actually built myself. It's just a 1/4 inch jack to 3.5mm converter. Super simple, just to make things easier. So these all going into my interface, but these are patched from different modules, so I can like hot swap different things in and out a lot easier than before. So that's useful. Mixer. So currently this mixer is purely for the rample, which I use in my improvs as a drum sequencer, but in my ambient, I have various different synth sounds and samples that I use. There's nothing really special with that. I'll just pick a random sound that sounds good and then just load it up and use that. But I've got these little SD cards here that I load up different samples for the rample. So this red one has all of the normal synths, and then the one that's currently in has all my drum samples. My grunge pedal. So the grunge pedal is great, especially for low, obviously because it's built for a guitar, low signals. So that's currently patched into my neutron. So when I do improvs, I can put that on and get a real nice gritty bass. I don't use it for the ambient, but it's super nice for creating gritty basses. And then blank panels that my friend printed out for me, which is quite nice, just to fill up some space. We've already talked about the K2, the graphic VCO. So this is one of my newest pieces of gear. This is basically a wavetable synth. So it comes with a whole bunch of presets, but you can also program your own waves into it using the editor on the actual device. It's really complicated and difficult to do, but you can do it, which is super cool. The standard wavetables that come with it are really useful as well. My favorite one is the organ, which I usually use. I don't know if I can... Yeah. So it gives you some really nice sounds, and you can modulate the morph. So I can't... Yeah, it's really fucking cool. It's a really nice synth. The only downside is you can't load your wavetables onto it. I don't know why. People say that you can, but I've not been able to find a way to do it. So, but like I said, it comes with a whole bunch of different wavetables built in, so it's super useful. I have an envelope. So this module here is for the graphic VCO because it doesn't have an envelope built in. So this is where I'm saying about like modular. To build something like this, you need so many individual modules. So like this graphic VCO cost me about 300 quid, right? And in order to play notes like a note, you need an envelope. So that's another like 60, 70 quid. And in order to have it sound more like a note, you need a filter, which is another £100, you know? So this is my Dope for filter, Wasp filter, that's currently patched into the graphic VCO, which is super nice. Yes, you need many modules to make synths. Yes. Yeah, unless you have a synth that has modules built into it that you can sort of piggyback off. Like, for example, here, the K2 has a VCA built into the patch bay. So I've patched in my graphic VCO into there to use the envelope for the amplitude. But I've still got the envelope for actually generating the envelope. It's so complicated, but it's super fun because you can just patch things around. And then lastly, this is my newest piece of gear. This is the Frequency Central white face filter. And this is a really cool piece of gear because there's two CV inputs, and the two CV inputs you can basically sum together to control the filter. So for example, on the first CV, I'll have maybe like an 8-bar sort of triangle modulation, so it'll go up and down. But then on the second CV, I'll have like a quarter note triangle, so you get modulation within the modulation. So it's nice. You can add a little bit of jitter to the overall sort of swell of the filter. And there's two inputs that get summed together that goes through to the single output. And what I've done here is I have my Juno running through the filter, but I have the two signals from the Juno. So I have a dry signal, and then I have a wet signal of my Mega Distortion pedal. And the Mega Distortion pedal is really nice with the Juno, especially if you boost the lows super hard. You get some really nice tones out of that. I don't know if I can... Is it this one, maybe? It's the white... If I turn everything off... So So that's what it sounds like with just the dry signal, but then you add in the wet signal. And you just get like a real nice gritty undertone to it. It's so good. It's so nice. Yeah, so that's the synths. These two pedals are for my guitar, so they're actually hooked up to another input for my guitar. And then this USB little thing is a breakout from my MIDI controller here, because the chassis is awkward and I wanted it flat, so I printed out a custom case for it, which I can't show you really, but yeah, it's alright. It's better than before. But then going to my gear, I have two launch pads. So my launch pads I used to use quite a lot, but these days I don't use so much, mainly because in the improv project, it's more of a mixer than like a performance set. So I don't really do a lot of MIDI control or CCs or automation or anything like that anymore. So all of these like macros I just don't use them. And for the clips, I just use the push, the trigger clips. So they pretty much go unused. In the Ambient project, I've got them set up so that they're more of a light show. So you can see here, the left one is basically playing or showing you what notes are being sent out to any synth that's currently connected. And it's all color-coded. So you can see the white notes when they play, that's going to my Juno. All of the green notes are going to my green track. All of the yellow ones are going to my yellow track. All of the orange ones are going to my orange track, etc., etc. All the purple ones are going to the ramble, which is my purple track, etc., etc. And then the right one I've got currently set up just showing a clock. So super simple. Super simple. I don't know why it's not actually showing. It's kind of broken a little bit, but maybe if I re-trigger the clip. There we go. Yeah. So it's just a clock, right? So it's like quarter notes, quarter notes, bars, 16th notes, or whatever the divisions are. It just helps me with timing and stuff. And you got the push. So obviously the push is the brain. That's where I control Ableton, so I don't have to use the mouse as much. You got the Juno. Juno's the Juno. It's nice, really nice synth. Highly recommend. It's a bit awkward to like place in your gear, but it's a really nice synth. And then we have the Fader Fox, is always my filter bank, so all of those knobs control a filter on each track. And then my MIDI mix, so my MIDI mix is set up for EQ. So highs, mids, lows, and then volume for each of the tracks going across. Super simple. And then lastly, my Oxy One, which is the brain of all of the things that I do. So I have a project set up on the Oxy One. I have the first track set to send MIDI to my Neutron, although it's basically not being used or utilized fully. This 4-step here is what controls the drone, and it's just a single note, so it's a bit of a waste, but you know. The second controls the K2. So what I've done is I've got a mono sequencer set up and just a bunch of random notes, pretty much in some form of musical order. So it's not truly random like the stochastic or the matricial mode, but it's got some kind of order. And I've got it set up to, what was the division set to? So it's half notes, but it's set to random, so it'll just go through random. I recently changed this so that it outputs to both the K2 and the Juno, which I found is actually really effective, because if I set the random percent chance to play to different values for each of the tracks, so for the K2 I've got it set to 40%, for the Juno I've got it set to 90%, you still feel a sort of variation between the notes that are being played, and then sometimes it will play the same note and it will just align really nicely. So you can hear the K2 is sustained, but the Juno sort of continues on, and and then when it resolves on the same note, it just feels really nice. And then on the third track, we have a stochastic sequencer, and the stochastic sequencer is basically random. So it's an Euclidean sequencer, type sequencer. So it's random in nature. I've got it set up to be the pentatonic, and that's going through to my graphic VCO, which, like I said, I usually use the organ sound because that sounds the sort of nicest. Very nice, very nice. And then lastly, we have the fourth sequencer, which controls 4 different synths. So we have the first one. So this one here controls the orange track, and the orange track is basically an arpeggiator, VST. You can hear it. It's very nice. And then on the next one we have the yellow track, which is more of like a pad, so that's useful for just adding in some high notes. Everything's got its own LFO filter on it just to add a bit of movement. And then the next one, 13, is the green track. So the green track is currently set to be a piano, just to give some extra sort of tones. Ooh, lovely piano sounds. Just smash that through a bunch of reverbs and it just sounds so nice and ethereal. It's very nice. And then the last track is 11, which is the rampool. So it's currently got my drum kit loaded in, so it's not going to sound very ambient. It's probably not even going to play at all, no. But yeah, I'll usually just have some random sound loaded in that, and then just like sort of tweak it in. Yeah, that's the sequences. That's basically it. Like I said earlier, my ambient project is super lazy. I really don't put a lot of effort into actually performing, because I just press play and let it go. Change the key every day and it sounds different and it's nice. You filter in different tracks. You don't have everything going at once. Filter in different tracks. And yeah, it sounds good. I like it anyway. The only other thing that I've got is my samples track. So my samples track, currently I've got 10 different samples loaded that I can play. My favourite one, if you probably remember or can always hear, is the Half-Life 2 announcer sample. So if I turn off all of the reverbs, you'll be able to hear it.
Citizen notice. Priority identification check in progress.
But because obviously in the game it's an actual announcer that in a train station, right? It makes so much sense. Someone suggested it in chat ages ago. I was like, oh, actually, yeah, that would be really fucking good. That would work so well. And literally, you turn down the wet so it's not so present, and then just run it through a whole bunch of reverbs and delays, filter it the fuck out, and you get some nice texture. You can't hear what's being said, but you get some really nice texture just to add in. And that's it. That's the ambient project. If I show you the actual project set, so this is what the project set actually looks like. So yeah, we got one track for each of the hardware instruments. So the red track is the neutron. So in the neutron track, we have the neutron. I don't know if you can see this well enough. Let me go full screen. There we go. We've got the neutron chain, so this is sending MIDI to the neutron and then receiving the audio out. Need to have a tuner on this track because it's always bloody out of tune. But something I learned recently, which has been quite nice, is adding a very high-pitched, not very high-pitched, but a high-pitched synth on top of my neutron, just to give it a little bit of extra harmonics. I can always filter it out with the filter, but you can hear it if I open the filter all the way. And then I've got a filter on that just sort of makes it gives it a bit of movement, so it's not so harsh all of the time. So yeah, that's quite nice, just to give it a little bit of extra sort of sounds. And I'm running that through a raw to give it some saturation, and a hybrid reverb just to sort of wash it out a little bit, because otherwise it's a bit too present. And then every track has a filter, and then I've got a couple of extra filters and an EQ. So with the neutron track, I actually send the audio to a sends channel here for the subs. So the sub returns, filters out anything above 500 hertz, but I put that through a chorus and a reverb and a little bit of EQ and a pan, just so that I've got a nice consistent sub that's not so overpowering and sort of muddying out the signal. And then obviously all of the highs gets filtered through here, back through the normal sort of chain, so I can still run everything through reverbs and stuff. Because if I send the whole signal through all of my reverbs, it's just gonna overpower everything, because the low frequency is always super powerful. And then in the orange track, I have an arpeggiator to give that sort of, arpeggiator. But this is currently it's an OPXAV VST. So that's what's currently being used on this track. It's really nice. I haven't felt the need to swap it out, but I might do at some point. It's one of the tracks that I like to sort of swap out every now and then. And yeah, like I said, every track's got a filter, a bit of compression and an EQ, and then also a limiter at the end for some reason, I don't know. My yellow track is pretty much exactly the same, except it's got a different VST loaded. So this is using an ARP 2600V. It's just a patch that I've loaded up, VST, and then some filtering, some compression, a pan to give it some movement, more EQ, and then another track filter. My green track, again, exactly the same filter, compressor, EQ, filter, but this has a piano loaded. I think the piano V. So this is just a really nice piano sound. It's just lovely, isn't it? Absolutely lovely. And then the blue track is the Erica VCO. You can't see my hand pointing at it, but it's the VCO. So that's got the organ loaded. So this doesn't actually take MIDI. This VCO, it's taking 1 octave per volt directly from the Oxy One, because that's the input. It doesn't have a MIDI input. So that's actually quite useful, because I don't have any more MIDI outputs. I've only got 3 MIDI outputs on the device that I use, and that's for the Neutron, the K2, and the Rample. So yes. And then we have the Rample. So the Rample, nothing's loaded on it because obviously it's still got my old SD card in it, but it's exactly the same. We have external instruments that we can load or send MIDI to, and then get the audio back out, and then filter, compressor, EQ, filter. The Juno is the Juno. It's pretty straightforward, I think. I've got a couple of extra patches that I built myself. Let's just turn it down a little bit. So these little Max for Live patches here, I built myself a while back. So this is just a random % chance to send the MIDI data through. This one will hold the note, whatever gets played. This one I can add an octave note, or shift the whole note up an octave or down an octave. Got an arpeggiator that's not being used, but it's there. Yeah, and then filter, compressor, bit of auto pan, EQ, filter. And then with the K2, again, percentage chance to play. So that's where the sending the same MIDI data through to the two synths, but having the random chance set differently on the two tracks really works with this. So this is only set to 40%, whereas the Juno is set to, where is it? 90%. And then we've got a track for the guitar. I really don't use this track, but it is there if I want to. I can never find a good FX patch for the guitar for my Ambient, so I really just don't use it. And then my samples. So you can see here I've got a drum rack full of the different samples. I trigger them with the push, but I have a hold patch here, so I only have to press it once and then it will hold that sample until I press stop, basically, and it will loop the sample the entire time. And a filter to automate it a bit, give it some movement, and another EQ and another filter. And then I've got just a generic noise sweep I can sort of add in, which is very nice. It sounds like a beach, waves washing in and out. But I can change the type of noise that I'm using. So currently it's using pink noise, but if I change it to white noise, it sounds different. Isn't that lovely? Doesn't it sound nice? And that's it. And then all of these other tracks are just MIDI manipulation. So this is for the launchpad to see all of the notes that are being played. This is the text speech. So I'm not on the right scene, so it doesn't actually work. But when something happens with the text speech, it runs through Ableton here using the Restream plugin. So obviously I can't run these tracks through my sends, because if I do, then it will come through in the VOD, and I don't want that. I want the video on YouTube to be just the audio of the set. I don't want people listening to announcements for like follows and subs and stuff. So that only outputs to the live stream and not to the VOD stream. And the way I do that is by sending the audio back out using Restream through the network to my main computer, which is running OBS, and then that consumes the audio and sends it as a separate audio channel. But I've got my own sort of delays and reverbs on that track to make it feel like it's, you know, in part of the audio, part of the set, but it's not. Yes, so part of the text-to-speech is using StreamerBot. So StreamerBot, it will trigger the MIDI. The MIDI note gets triggered in here. So I've got like the horns, for example, is on a drum rack, and it will trigger a random clip. The text-to-speech is it comes from, what was it called? VoiceBot? SpeakerBot, that's it. SpeakerBot, which sends the audio through to Ableton, which then goes through some effects and then sent back to my computer. Yes, StreamerBot is very cool. It's a bit weird, complicated to use if you're not used to it, but it's very powerful. Like, I can see some people, like a streamer I know, Mark and Sutton, they do a whole bunch of adaptations for children with disabilities, like toy adaptations, and they have a whole bunch of crazy stuff set up with StreamerBot. I think they've got one thing where if you do a redemption, it will fire a Nerf gun at them, which is really cool. So there's so much you can do with it. I haven't explored nearly 1% of the possibilities with it. But yeah, I use that for my announcer, my train horn channel point trigger. And then yeah, these are just MIDI. So it'll take MIDI from the Oxy and then send it to the actual instrument in Ableton. That's it. And then obviously we've got my sends. So the first one, if I put my mic down for a sec. Yeah, so we've got A, which is just pretty much the dry signal of all of the things that are being sent to it, which is actually not a whole lot. I don't really send a whole lot of dry signals. You can see here, you know, it's all just a little bit, but that goes through a compressor just to sort of merge all of the sounds together, make it sound all nice and cohesive. Then the first reverb is RAWM. So RAWM is Native Instruments, and this is my favourite reverb. I absolutely love RAWM. It is so nice and consistent to get a really nice sound out of. So I use that. A little bit of EQ just to make sure that the lows aren't sort of muddying the sound. Black Hole is another extremely good reverb, and they've probably got a sale on for Black Friday, so definitely pick it up if you need a good reverb. Black Hole is a very good reverb. I use this a lot with my guitar, and it just produces some really nice tones. So yeah, I've got that on the second one. Again, another little bit of EQ and another little bit of filtering. I have a second RAWM instance, but this time I have it set to the Cosmic mode. The Cosmic mode is really nice because it adds harmonics to the actual audio signal. Polaris. Oh, okay. I used to have Polaris on this, but I haven't renamed the track. So currently I have Supermassive set up on this instance, on this Sens channel. I probably should rename that, but can't be bothered. Delay is another VST that I own. It's a delay, but it can be used as a reverb. I think I've got it set up as a delay. It's pretty good. It's, you know, it's just these two sends are pretty much my like hot swap sends, so I'll swap in and out different reverbs or delays depending on if I get fed up with what's currently on there. And then I have Replica. So Replica again is another Native Instruments VST. This is a delay. This is fantastic delay, really, really good. Again, with like RAWM, it's very consistent to get a very nice sound, but it's also got a couple of options for like additional effects. Like I've got a chorus effect here and a diffusion mode for the actual delay. Really nice. And then I have a reverb bus, so all of my reverbs go through this bus channel, which again goes through a compressor and a limiter, and then my subs, and then that all goes through to the A bus for compressing, and then finally to my main channel where I have a filter, which I don't think is actually set up for anything. Ah, right, okay, so I use the volume on this thing, just so I can, like, you know, boost the volume and stuff. Compressor, a saturator, just to give it some extra volume, an EQ, which I can control using my MIDI controller, another limiter, and then a spectrum analyzer, so that I can see anything wrong with the signal. And that's it. That's the Ambient project in a nutshell. Yeah, I know that's quite a lot of information. I'm going to write up an update to my blog post with all of that information, and I'll probably cut out this bit and use that as the video. So if you're watching this, follow me on Twitch, same username, @ScruffyFox, where I do ambient during the daytime whilst I'm working from home. Pretty much what you can hear here is pretty much what I do. It's nice, isn't it? It's lovely. I do like the ambient music.